Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf here from Daily Clout. As I promised, I'm updating you about two subjects today. My interview and Megan Barrakett's interview. She's the founder of One Girl, and she's an advocate for youth. And she and I interviewed Suraj Patel a couple of days ago. He's running to unseat Carolyn Maloney in New York for Congress. And since the audio, just being super transparent with you all, so transparent that I just dropped my computer, since you all were really interested in the video, but there were some audio issues with it, I wanted to do justice to his campaign and also to all of you who were interested in Suraj Patel's run, and share with you, with now better audio, what it was he was bringing up to promise the people of New York, and specifically District 12. So with a big shout out to Megan Barraket, who was with me to ask the questions, these are the headlines. And in the second half of this video, I'm going to update you on the bills about children in concentration camps, children in detention in Texas, which has been at the center of so many news stories. So starting with Suraj Patel. So he's a young challenger to Carolyn Maloney. Now, Representative Maloney has been in office for decades. She's very popular with her constituency. She's a Democrat, and we've had the privilege of covering and talking to Representative Maloney a lot at Daily Clout. She's one of the first elected officials to give us time and invite us to her events. So we're nonpartisan, just sharing, being even-handed. So she's well known to our community for being out front with a number of really feminist bills, bills that many people think are quite innovative. For instance, she's been a long-time advocate for the ERA, and she is pushing it again. She's led the charge to have a women's history museum in DC. Daily Clout ran an op-ed about that. And she also pushed a bill that a lot of people are interested in the world of finance and corporate boards, which are so unbalanced in terms of gender. And this doesn't have just an impact at the top, as you can imagine. It also affects decisions about how workers are treated, how the pay gap is addressed, how safe women are and men from sexual harassment in the workplace. So she pushed a bill to make boards more transparent in terms of gender. So I always thought that she represented the 12th district, just the Upper East Side. So, because that's who you hear from, the wealthy people on the Upper East Side. So Megan Barraket and I went to visit Suraj Patel's campaign office a couple of days ago. I happened to bump into him in a park, and I'd never seen or heard of him. He was passing out flyers. They also innovatively pass out condoms with Suraj Patel's name on them, and he corrected me, name on the package, not his name on the condom, although that would also generate headlines, and nail art, which is also very clever. But his office was really unusual. It was a new vibe. They boast of having 200 millennial volunteers. Actually, some members of our Daily Clout community are volunteers. And young people seem to be in charge of everything at the office in a good way. And it was very buzzing along, but very kind of peaceful, which is unusual for campaign headquarters. So Suraj sat right down with us after a bunch of other media interviews, and some of the really innovative bills that he's pushing or proposals he's making for the people of that part of New York are kind of newsworthy. Again, we're not supposed to endorse, but they are worth your paying attention to, especially if you live in District 12. And even if you don't live in District 12, the great thing about Daily Clout is you can learn from other legislators and replicate the bills that you like, the legislation and policies that you like in other parts of the country. So Suraj has been out front with legislation to not criminalize websites and like the backs of Craigslist and other listings that provide sex workers advertising. And there's been a lot of legislation to criminalize these sites. but he actually listened to sex workers, which pretty much no real elected official I've ever heard of, except in Europe, has done, because it's a risky thing to do in terms of your political capital, your base, conservatives using it against you. But he listened to the sex workers of his district in New York. And not surprisingly, New York is a center for sex work. And it spans many kinds of people at many levels of society, many levels of income. He listened to trans women who were sex workers. He listened to pretty much everyone he could, because they were tweeting him and emailing him about their life as sex workers. And how interesting, I'm getting a flood of hearts, right? Everyone's legislating about sex workers and sex work. No one ever listens to what sex workers who are on the front lines say makes them safest. So what they've been saying is, don't ban these pages because it makes trafficking more hidden. It makes abuse more hidden. It makes it harder to find underage girls or boys being trafficked, people who are being held against their will. And thank you for the compliment. And it absolutely won't make them safer. And of course, critics of crackdowns on free speech worry about the chilling effect this would have on free speech to police, any kind of speech, including speech you don't like. And so we had a conversation about it, and afterwards, Megan and I talked about this policy, and we're not partisan, but we definitely, as women, kind of thought that anything that women say in trafficked work or sex work makes them safer, you really need to pay attention to. You really need to take into account when you're producing policy that will affect those women and girls and children. And trafficking is so much in the news right now. I mean, as I said, every week practically there's a bill in Congress, many of which you don't hear about trafficking. It's huge. So I thought that was notable that he would talk so frankly about people who society wants to completely marginalize, or not hear from, or sentimentalize, or commodify, or buy and sell. The other thing that jumped out from our interview with Suraj Patel is he talked about who turns up at primaries. Now, you think that this is going to be wonky and boring, but I promise you it won't. Primaries, you're encouraged to think they're boring, right? Because they're so important, and they give you so much power if you show up at the primary. And I don't mean presidential year primaries. I mean those boring, who knows who's running, it's annoying, I'm busy, off-year congressional primaries. So this is one of them in New York. The primary date for District 12 is the 26th of this month, so very soon. So I have scrambled around as CEO of Daily Clout. For instance, I did this in San Francisco. It's really hard to find out anything about a primary. Major news, sorry San Francisco Chronicle, I'm scolding you, isn't good about explaining who's running, but also what their actual platform is instead of the horse race, or easy ways that you can actually vote in the primary. Most people don't know, for instance, I didn't know, that in New York, you can get an absentee ballot, and the deadline was yesterday, and we posted it, just if you're out of town. You don't have to be serving the military. You can just be out of town and send in an absentee ballot, avoid long lines, and this is really important, avoid racist or classist harassment, long lines, red tape, oops, I lost your registration at your polling site, which many people of color around the country are reporting, and certainly lower income neighborhoods also report. So Suraj talked about the fact that only 7% of people vote in his district's primary. Hi, Damien. And that he was showing me, and you can see on his website, this map. None of them put the map on their website that I've seen, right? Showing that District 12 is gigantic. It's not just the Upper East Side. I was wrong, because the New York media doesn't cover anyone else in District 12, right? Because they're not reading the New York Times or the New Yorker, possibly, or that's not their base. So it's parts of many boroughs that have demographics that include people of all races, all ethnicities, and all income levels, including working class and low income and lower middle class. It's not all rich white people and primarily white people in the Upper East Side. So to me, this is really important. And our mission at Daily Clout is to energize democracy, right? He's saying only 7% of people show up. Most of them are this very narrow slice of a demographic, and he's trying to get the vote out among all the other, what is it? It's 93% of people in the 12th District of New York who don't vote in the primary. So why bother voting in the fucking primary, right? I will tell you why. They don't, your elected official, like if Suraj wins, right? Your elected official doesn't know that you voted for him or her, but they know if you voted, all right? They can tell. That's public information. So when you call or send an email, as many of our competitors ask you to do, no disrespect to them, and say, I hate your policy or fight Trump or Hillary on this or that, you really don't count to them if you haven't voted in their primary, right? They'll know, they know. And if you don't vote at all, you really, really don't count. But if you do vote in their primary and you do it every year, you are on their list. It's automated. Your name, becomes valuable and important, and they have to listen to you, especially if, and Daily Clout is going to roll this out as soon as possible. We're raising money, donate, become members. You add a commitment on our website or other software to take action for them, right? Like I'll do a fundraiser with my little group of friends. I'll put a sign on my lawn. So his point is really well taken. If he can mobilize all those people who aren't already represented by Carolyn Maloney, then A, he really does have a chance of unseating her. And B, it's a whole different set of voices with different issues than the ones in one of the richest neighborhoods, in one of the richest cities in the world. So that really struck me. I don't want to speak for Megan, but it was a very novel approach. Most people, sadly, and this is one reason politics is corrupt in America, are trying to limit the people who vote to their base that they already serve and own and have relationships with. So he's saying throw open the doors. Let's have relationships with all these people. The other thing that was really notable about Suraj's campaign, and again I have to say notable rather than awesome because we're nonpartisan, is his method of delivery. So his campaign headquarters is in a former bar, and it was really buzzy and welcoming and relaxed. That's not the usual nerdy campaign headquarters, but also some marketing genius is advising him because in terms of the medium is the message, Megan and I went out to get an iced coffee at a coffee stand, and they're registering voters at the coffee stand, if I understood that correctly, or at least passing out campaign literature. He gave campaign literature to all the coffee stands he could in New York City. So that's putting that person who's a barista or, often an immigrant, a hardworking person. I've worked at a stand in New York City selling ice cream. It's incredibly hard work. It's hard to make money. And he's put those people in the position of advocating for him, basically, or at least making sure their clients get his campaign literature. It's really respecting working people, I think, to say, here, you're a gatekeeper. You see that your clients get this material. And I think, his opponents would be well advised to do the same. I think that's a real competitive advantage. And, the other things I mentioned, the condoms, the nail art, bringing his information in a really easy to use, friendly way, his platform right there on his website, go take a look, rather than what you usually have to do, which is plow through and plow through and plow through tons of, you want to kill yourself, verbiage to even find out, and the left and the right does this for good reason, what your candidate stands for. So to me, that's also worth paying attention to, because if you have that postcard that he gives out saying, this is my platform, it means that in, 2 years, if he wins, you can say to him, Suraj, you said you'd do this and you've done 2 out of 10. It's not okay, or you can hold him accountable. So, I wanted to definitely summarize what struck me most. not speaking for Megan, she'll have her own summary about the interview we did with Suraj Patel. I'm impressed that he gave us time between Fox and New York One, since we are a website that is not corporate owned, that reaches 1.5 million people this month on Twitter. And so there you are. If you are in his district, or if you support Carolyn Maloney, run to the primary, right? Make sure you're registered, make sure you can vote, and go vote. It's so important. And then you can, if he's elected or if she's elected, we'll hold your hand going forward to make sure that you can have those meetings with either Rep. Maloney or Representative Patel, and you can push for your agenda, network using BillCam to push for your agenda. Last thing I want to say, this was real news, is Representative Maloney did say that a bunch of Suraj's campaign contributions were from people named Patel, which is his name. That's a really interesting thing to say, because as many Indians and many well-informed people know, Patel is a super common name. It's like saying a bunch of people named Smith or Jones voted for Donald Trump. And I asked Suraj, did you think that was a little bit of dog whistle politics? So what does that mean? It means those coded ways you're signaling about race to mobilize your own base. And I said in the interview, if honestly, being nonpartisan, if a candidate said, and I'm Jewish, there are a lot of people donating to that candidate named Cohen or Levy, I would think, that's kind of a racially tinged or anti-Semitic comment. And he, said, yeah, there are 1 million people named Patel. And he did confirm that, at first he thought she had just misspoken, but then on reflection, as she, didn't back down from that statement, he thought it could be, I don't want to put words in his mouth, you can watch the interview, he thought it could be dog whistle politics. So you make up your own mind. We're non-partial. We don't support either candidate. We're shining a light on this race. Very important race. Last thing I want to do before I sign off of this is say there's kind of a trend. There's kind of a trend. We have these two powerful, well-established women on the Democratic side. Nancy Pelosi in California, who represents San Francisco, and Carolyn Maloney here in New York. Very wealthy supporters. One criticism Patel had of Maloney is that she really serves Wall Street in his view, right? Serves the financial markets who have caused so much damage, many people think, to working people. Well, in San Francisco, Daily Clout covered the campaign of Shahid Buttar, a challenger out of nowhere, a young Pakistani immigrant who took on Nancy Pelosi and beat out all the other progressives, right? And that's interesting. And he had a similar set of critiques. He's further to the left, I would say, than Suraj Patel, but it was definitely this is not good enough. You voted for the Iraq War, not good enough. You don't represent the grassroots, the ordinary people. Suraj Patel is more of I would say more in the mainstream progressive side, but he's also coming as a young, he says, person of color, challenging this well-established, well-supported woman, and saying, you voted for the Iraq War, you're complicit with a lot of things that are going wrong, it's time for fresh blood. So you make up your own mind, but I think it's an interesting dynamic. Now, we're going to shift gears. Let's see if we have any comments. Everyone's greeting me. They like my eye makeup. Thank you very much. And then Damien Schloming says, well, usually women who are sex workers will explain to you what policies are best because they keep them safest. But they also will explain what policies are best because they help them make the most money. I hear you. And as a feminist, I would say it's very patriarchal of any government to decide which set of motivations is most legitimate for sex workers. If I think that women have to make up their own minds about their political priorities, as does everybody. And if we think they're still not safe enough, then it's up to us to craft policies that sex workers think help them make money and keep them safe, right? And that's true for every industry. I mean, there's a reason children aren't being sent up to clean, smokestacks anymore as they were in the 19th century. There were regulations about it, and other supports help them not have to need that to help feed their families. So I think sex work is in the same category. It's something women do and men do when they're desperate, or when they need the money, or when it's by far the easiest way to make money, given the other commitments they have, such as law school or getting an undergraduate degree, or it's so widespread. We could do a whole other video on this, but my interns, Nishka Dewan, Anjali Piti, and Bhavani Piti, report, and I know it's true from my own students, that students at NYU, students at Stony Brook, undergraduate women who are, middle class or working class, or even just have a huge amount of debt staring at them, are using these websites that let them hook up with a sugar daddy, or let them hook up with, random guys for money. I think I see them in the Village on Saturday night, not the individual students, but, young women who are otherwise not professional sex workers doing this. And you can't, economically, that was inevitable, because they can make, $600, $1,000, $2,000 in a night, whereas they could have a terrible date and make no money at all. And I'm not minimizing it. I'm just saying it's a whole new world out there because of technology. And I think we need to take a fresh look and listen, as Suraj Patel is doing, at what sex workers say is most important for them. All right, moving on to the headline news last few days. Very sad, much less, inspiring, a story. We all by now know that there have been children separated, at least over 2,000 of them documented as being separated from their moms and dads at the border, as their parents have been detained by ICE as criminals for entering the country illegally. And we know, and we've seen reports and documentation. Politico got audio from that, situation, which is heartrending, where you can hear kids weeping, but like you've never heard weeping before, as they are traumatically being taken away from their parents. You can hear children, a child over and over again saying, "I've memorized my aunt's number. Please call her. I've memorized my aunt's number. Please call her. She'll come get me." Heartbreaking. As the author of The End of America, which I wrote in 2008, I told you this day would come. I don't want to mince words. I don't want to be charming. I said, we've got Guantanamo. If we're not going to close Guantanamo, that's how they start, right? I've studied the closing of democracies. They start with a gulag, where they take the most hated, that most people can agree, those accused terrorists, most hated, and whip up hysteria, in this case Islamophobia, and then shut them away without lawyers, without charge or trial, without the Red Cross being able to check on them, which international law provides for. I said, if you're not going to close this, sooner or later these will open on U.S. soil, and they'll start to accept U.S. citizens. So in 2012, I reported on the National Defense Authorization Act, which almost no major media reported on at that time, which literally gave the president, any president, the power to detain any of us U.S. citizens without charge or trial forever, if we fit some loosely defined having offered material support for terrorism, which I witnessed Obama's lawyers in a courtroom almost empty of other press, because no other press was interested, right? I was writing notes on a napkin, astonishingly, because the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal should be there, the Washington Post and CNN. And Obama's lawyers confirmed that this included journalists like Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges was there, right? He was one of the plaintiffs in this appeal against the NDAA. He was in the courtroom as Obama's lawyers, not Bush, not Trump, Obama's lawyers said, yep, we would take Mr. Hedges forever if he interviewed anyone connected with this group. So I told you, I've studied, you cannot name, and I went across the country in 2008, 2009, 2010, and I said, I will give you, what did I say, $60,000 or $100,000, which I don't have, but I was safe. I said, name a country in history that has opened a concentration camp anywhere outside the rule of law that didn't end up using it on its own citizens. Name one. And no one ever could name one, because there isn't one. Once the state is given permission in a democracy by its citizens to do that, it will, of course, do it, and the pattern is consistent. Then it will start rounding up activists. Then it will start rounding up opposition leaders. Then it will start rounding up clergy. Then it will start rounding up labor leaders. And then they will come for you and me. That's simple. And by the way, immigrants are, at the top of that line of people who get rounded up, like the Roma, the gypsies rounded them up. I'm sorry, the Roma, the Nazis rounded them up. So I guess I'm standing here saying, I want to be hopeful, I want to be positive, but I'm fucking angry because I literally spent years of my life, and doing everything I could, making a movie, making 2 books, hand traveling the country, without any giant corporate anything behind me, trying to shake the bars of this nation and say, there is no exception to this. There's no exception. If you let them do that to those guys who are not accused of anything and have never been before a judge, they're gonna do it to you, whether you like them or not. They're coming for you, and it's just a matter of time. So it's been 9 years. And, I don't know what to say to you. Now is the time. I mean, it's step 10. It's not going to get nicer. They have the detention centers. Now they're taking someone else's kids. They're going to take your kids if you don't, you've got a fascist coup, and it's up to you if you're going to mobilize, and this is especially important for Republicans, your elected officials to restore our democracy. I'm not going to say what shape that should take because we're not partisan, but it's not democracy. It's against the rule of law, it's against American values, and it's categorically what fascist regimes do, is they detain people without charge of trial and they torture them. And taking away your children is torture by international standards, and keeping children in traumatic environments isolated from their parents and caregivers is also torture. So we're torturing children in the United States, we're warehousing babies, and I can't sound this alarm any better than I already have. Moving on to Daily Cloud's mission, which is to tell you some bills that will address it. You can go to our website, dailycloud.io, later today, and thank you, there are some great questions. And we'll be posting this this blog, which has summarized, with help from Fran Chef Maurer and Nisha Jain, has summarized what the bills are that are in Congress right now to address these children and babies separated from their parents. So there's a great question from Eve. Welcome. How does the 1993 case Flores versus Reno play into what's going on now with immigrant children? Great question, very well informed. So that's in our blog as well. So Flores versus Reno was a regulation that provided for the detention of families. And that's why when people say this started under Obama, there's truth to that. Obama wasn't, separating children from parents, but he was definitely detaining people. And detaining families. So the answer is human rights advocates, have appealed this ruling, and the Ninth Circuit is deciding what to do about that appeal. So that ruling is being appealed by human rights advocates, and we'll keep you posted on the progress of that. So, and that's an example just to familiarize everyone with how your democracy works. There are a couple of ways to change what's happening in a democracy. One of them is a bill, and that's what we're going to be talking about next. And one of them is through the judiciary, and that's what Eve Welcome brought up. You can appeal a terrible law, once it's become a law, or a terrible ruling once it's become a ruling, by bringing an appeal. And then a judge decides. And just a refresher, because they don't teach civics anymore, we've got the legislative body, we've got the judicial body, we've got 3 branches of government. And so that is how they're going about that. And then we also have these 2 bills. Okay, so the Republican bill was proposed earlier in June, on June 14th, and then it goes to the floor on June 24th. It's a draft bill, so you can't see it on BillCam. And I think this is a problem. It's not public, right? So we have put the draft of the bill into the blog. You'll see it later today, but you can't share it easily. And I think we have to push our representatives, like with the tax bill, to get the draft into GovTrack and into Legiscan, all these databases, so we can see it while it's being worked on, right? Otherwise, it's in darkness. And that initially, they said it would take the loopholes out of the immigration process. So after this uproar around the children being separated from their parents, there's now action on the Republican side to amend that draft or to edit that draft so that families are not separated. The other thing the Republicans are proposing is to move dozens and dozens of judges down to the border so cases get heard and tried much more quickly. I just want to make a note about that. As a student of fascist societies, that's a classic fascist move. They're called kangaroo courts. Many fascist societies do super fast, the judge rules, the judge rules, the judge rules, the judge rules. And the trouble with that is it turns into a mill where, you really can't in 4 minutes hear the nuances of a case or deliberate properly. And it's also, often turns into a rubber stamping of what the executive, which is the third branch of government, wants you to do. So just because you have judges doesn't mean you don't have fascism. Just bear that in mind. So I'm nonpartisan. Those of you who support the Republican bill, go take a look at it on BillCam on Daily Cloud in about an hour. Those who don't, take a look at the Democratic bill. And you can also lobby your representative using BillCam to use elements of each bill in the other bill, or propose your own amendment by tweeting your own addition to the bill to your representative using BillCam. All right, on the Democratic side, there is a bill that it was introduced by Feinstein, who's been very vocal about this, and all of the Democrats have now signed on, and the Democrats are inviting their colleagues to sign on. And this bill bans the separation of families. And that's what that bill focuses on, and says that it violates the best interests of the child, and it would just make it illegal to separate families in that way. So that's our update. You can see the names of the bills and the actual bills themselves, the draft form embedded, the Democratic form in a BillCam, in about an hour on dailycloud.io. And thank God we still have the basic structure of a democracy, because if you consistently stay vigilant, if you don't like concentration camps, if you don't like people being held without charge or trial, you can lobby more effectively using our technology or using your friends and neighbors and social media, if you prefer, to pass legislation to reverse the National Defense Authorization Act, to say you can't hold every American without charge or trial, to close Guantanamo if you don't want them coming for you, not being partisan, just talking about democracy. And you can also, if you want the kids to be reunited with their parents, you can go take a look at both bills and decide which one suits your needs. Or you can take the Democratic bill in a BillCam, tweet your representative. They're all listed on BillCam, and you can tell them, I want you to add this or that. I want you to add, more support, less support, faster expediting, psychologists on site, whatever it is you want to add. Like you drive this democracy. It's your democracy. So that's Naomi Wolf. I'm here with Daily Cloud. Please, guys, please become members of Daily Cloud. I have all these wonderful young policy analysts, researchers, videographers. They are doing this because they love democracy and they love you, and they want to inform you about your democracy, your bills. I want to pay them. I need to pay them. They need to pay their rent. It costs money to host. It costs money to pay our developers to get you this technology. Please, 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 please. I'm doing this out of the goodness of whatever. I'm doing it for free because I love democracy too. I'm a single mom, whatever. We don't have a corporate sponsor. We don't have buckets of money. Please, please, please become members of Daily Clout. We'll send you every week lots of hearts and thumbs up. Thank you. We'll send you every week Isaiah Thompson's amazing video This Week in Congress, so you know exactly what they're up to, because we read the bills, other people don't. And we'll also research the issues that you tell us to research, and we'll report on them like this. This is me signing off. Louis McKenzie says, and then they'll come for you. So true. You probably said it before I said it. And then Trisha Roberts says, yes, massive deportation under Obama. So true, and Democrats are hypocrites not to acknowledge that. Trisha Roberts says, yes, this is how it starts. And Thomas Jeffrey says, she used to be a guest on the Alex Jones show all the time. Indeed, because I will go anywhere to talk about the Constitution, and I'll talk to anyone. And Thomas Eccleston says, I remember when she was honest. Well, I'm doing my best, Thomas. That's fine. It's the internet. You can say whatever you want. But let me address your questions if you think I'm misstating anything. Thomas Eccleston says, why weren't liberals furious about these photos of illegal immigrant detentions under Obama? And it says, flashback, Obama administration kept illegal Mexican kids in camps. That's really important information. I will post it on my social media. And I have to agree with you, Thomas, and I've been saying this for years. There were 6 people in America at a national level complaining about Obama's horrible, worse than Bush, assault on civil rights. Deportations, spying, drone attacks on American citizens and their relatives. I was one of them. So maybe you haven't been following me during the Obama years, but literally Amy Goodman, Glenn Greenwald, me, and it's hard to think of other people on the progressive side, were consistent criticizing Obama for violations. And if the press hasn't covered Obama separating children, then I will cover it, all right? We are nonpartisan. We care about the Constitution. Let's see. Avoid Antifa and vote red, says Thomas Eccleston. Damien Schloming says, well, usually women who, I read that one already. Muzami Aga says, hello, hello, Muzami. And let's see if there's anyone else. Oh, and Trisha asks, when will U.S. get involved in Yemen genocide be addressed and ended? That's a really good question, and I'm going to bookmark that, Trisha, for future reporting, because I do see reports about Yemen in my news feed, not from mainstream U.S. news, and it's critical. So let me report on that for the future. Again, the more you support us, the easier it is for me to have the resources to ask people to research that, so I can give you a report and research it myself. DeMarie Moulatieri says, thanks, Catherine. And Catherine says, where was the outrage? Check out her documentary called The End of America. She talked about this a long time ago. Catherine, thank you. It's true. You can't imagine my heartbreak. It sucks. And I'm not trying to be whiny, but it sucks because when you are seeing what's ahead and a bunch of the news media doesn't see it, you get called a lot of names like conspiratorial and overblown, as one of the major news outlets described The End of America and my warnings about fascism. 8 years ago, I wish I was wrong. I wish I'd been wrong. But we still have a little bit of time if we renew democracy now. And on that note, thank you all for listening. Please share. Please go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, come to dailyclout.io. And as I said, please do become members. All right. Thank you so much. See you next time.